Let's talk about this week's Parsha, but before we talk, let's talk about the Kohanim. In the desert, the plan was that the firstborn are going to be the priests. That was the original plan. That the firstborn of every family is going to go and serve in the temple. But because the people sinned, and the only people who didn't sin in the golden calf was the tribe of Levi, so God switched between the firstborn and the Kohanim. He says, I don't want these guys to serve, I want this guy to serve who didn't sin. And then that's where you do Pidyon Haben, and the whole spiel. Okay. Now, most people actually have the wrong impression of what used to be in the temple. Even in the time, let's go back to the time of the temple. The time of the temple, think about it, they think that the Kohanim used to work in the temple all the time. But it didn't happen this way. The Kohanim didn't work in the temple all the time. And I'll tell you why.
Too many.
Oh, very good. There's too many. Make a calculation. Let's say there were 20, 30, 40,000 Kohanim, somewhere around there, in that neighborhood. Yeah, how many can work in the temple? Now, it was work, also the work was done in shifts. It was a weekly shift in the temple.
So how many Kohanim you need in a shift?
Oh, so it's not, I think it's like 40 or 50 in a shift. That's all you need. And there's not many families who work. So out of the whole family, 40 or 50, that they serve per family twice a year, as we're going to see soon. But the family, it was big families. So you're talking about a family might have been 5,000 people. So out of that 5,000 people, twice a year, 50 worked on this week and 50 worked. So the majority of... That's what we're going to. That's what we're going to go to today. That's exactly what the Sicha is going to be. Yeah. So that's exactly what we're going to learn today. So let's start from the beginning. So it says like this: בזמן שבית המקדש היה קיים, at the time that the temple used to be there, כשהכהנים היו עובדים בית המקדש, when the Kohanim used to serve in the temple, חילקו את כל הכהנים ל-24 משמרות. The entire Kohanim were divided into 24 families. So that's it. So if you take 24 families, a year has around 50. Yeah. It was according to the families, like 4 families in Mishmeret, whatever. The original families. I'm not talking about, we have Elazar Itamar, the David Navi organ. So from Elazar Itamar, the sons or the grandsons, these are the 24 Mishmarot, that's the leader. And everything comes from there. So you make a calculation, if it's 24 Mishmarot, they're only working twice a year. Around 24, 48 weeks, it's all 52 weeks in a year, it's around twice a year they work. Okay. ולכל משמר ומשמר היה זמן קבוע לבוא אל המקום אשר יבחר השם כדי לעבוד בית המקדש. Every family, every group, every משמרת as it's called, had its allotted time twice a year. That group used to come to the temple. Okay.
And the Mishmeret was how many, like 12 hours Mishmeret or?
A week.
The whole week?
The whole week. משה רבינו חילק הכהנים ל8 משמרות. It says it didn't start with 24. When it was in the time of Moshe, there weren't that many Kohanim. So he divided them into 8 families. 4 מאלעזר ו4 מאיתמר. 4 from Elazar and 4 from Itamar. Yeah? וכן היה עד שמואל הנביא. So until שמואל הנביא, it was divided into those 4 and 4. ובימי שמואל חילקם הוא ודוד המלך ל24 משמר. So Shmuel and David made more mishmarot. When you have only 8 mishmarot, every 2 months you go again. So now it's once a year. It was so many people, nobody had the chance to go. So you say once a year or twice a year. ועל כל משמר ומשמר ראש אחד ממונה. And every mishmar, you had the designated one who's the leader. ועולין לירושלים לעבודה משמר לכל שבת. And those group, it looks like it was the entire group went up. The entire group went up to Yerushalayim. So let's say 5,000 people went up to Yerushalayim, but not all the 5,000 are going to work now. Those 5,000 has to go up to Yerushalayim. What would happen? They will make a lottery. It will be a lottery, And those who won the lottery would serve, and those who didn't would not serve. Simple. Go home.
They'll be in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, and in the next shift, in the second time of the year, what will happen? Those people who already worked are out of the lottery.
Out of the lottery.
And all the other ones are in.
Give him a better chance.
That's right, to give them a better chance.
You won already.
Very good. Shalom Aleichem. ומيום השבת ליום השבת הם מתחלפים. So these, can you pass them down? Yeah. So the Kohanim would shift from one week to another. משמר יוצא והאחר שהוא אחריו נכנס. So a new group of Kohanim would come and serve in the temple. עד שיגמרו וחוזרים חלילה, until those are finished and they will come again and again. They never actually finished because the new Kohanim that come into the old ones are dying. You know, I don't think there was ever happened that the entire group actually served. Never happened. We are on page 4. This is actually very interesting thing. This stone they found after the destruction. We're on page number 4. They found it after the destruction of the temple, many years after. Yeah? And even there you can see that the Kohanim, it was still written down who served and which Kohanim. It says, Mishmeret Rishona Yohariv Mesarvei Madan, Mishmeret Shniya, and you see that's 24 Mishmarot. And the names over here are the leaders of those are the leaders of the Mishmeret. Those are the leaders of the group. And this is found after the second temple. So it says that they still had the Mishmeret, even though they didn't bring sacrifices then. But they had the Mishmeret. It's a very interesting stone that you can actually see that in their digs, these things. Interesting thing. Okay. Yeah. Because the groups, and also another thing to remember, a lot of people think, what did the Kohanim do throughout the year if they only served in the temple just once in a while, maybe once a lifetime, maybe twice a lifetime, not much more, for 1 week? What do they do the rest of the time? So the rest of the time the Kohanim were pretty much teachers. They were teachers, they were rabbis. That was their job. And also you have to remember another thing. It has to do with money. Kohanim, a lot of people were thinking they only were in Yerushalayim. It's incorrect.
They were all over.
They were all over, that's right. Wherever there was a lot of produce, the Kohanim would move over there because they will get the truma, they got the meiser from the neighborhood, from the people in their neighborhood. So if there was ever too many Israel in one place, trust me, the Kohanim would move over there because they know, over there you get a lot of stuff. And that was the thing. Yeah, and that was the full time because they didn't have any land, they couldn't work. Okay. So we're going to see. אומנם בשיעור היומי ישנו חידוש בדבר. Now we're going to see, in this week's parsha, we find something interesting. What do we find? It says like this, וכי יבוא הלוי מאחד שעריך, מכל ישראל אשר הוא גר שם. It says, if the Levi is going to come from one of your gates, from one of the cities where he lives, הוא בא בכל אהבת נפשו אל המקום, and he come with all his desires. He comes with all his desires to the place אשר יבחר השם, that God will choose, which means the temple, ירושלים, ושרת בשם אלוקיו, and he's going to serve in the name of God. ככל אחיו הלוויים העומדים שם לפני השם. He would serve like all his other brothers, the Leviim, that are standing there in front of God. Says, what's going on over here? I thought Bet HaMikdash, it's always because Yerushalayim is not mentioned in the Torah. ככל אחיו הלוויים העומדים שם לפני השם. So it's very strange.
So they have to let him work in the Bet HaMikdash.
So
he really wants.
Very good. So there's a mishmeret. Didn't we just say there was a mishmeret? There was a group that had its time. And all of a sudden said, if the guy really wants, he can come and work. What does that mean? What do you mean? I thought there was lottery. I thought there were things. So let's continue. Rashi explains. הוא בא בכל אהבת נפשו ושירת. He says he's going to come with all his desires and he's going to serve. לימד על הכהן. So it says we're not talking about the Levi over here, we're talking about specifically about the Kohen. שבה הוא מקריב קורבנות נדבתו או חובתו ואפילו במשמר שאינו שלו. It says, what are the job of the group, of the קבוצות that we told before, of these groups, the mishmarot that we talked about? The work of the mishmarot was to serve the Jewish people. If you're a Kohen and you come and you need to bring a sacrifice, bring your own sacrifice, you don't need them. It says, I don't need you guys. You're here to serve whom? You're here to serve the other Jews. Me, I can do my own job. That's why it looks from Rashi. Okay. Yeah? I can do my own job. דבר אחר, so it says another thing it teaches us. So first of all, we learned that a Kohen, every time I want to bring a sacrifice, I'm a Kohen, for example. So every time I want to bring a sacrifice, I don't need to give my sacrifice to the other Kohanim. I can come.
You come and do your own way.
I come and do myself, whatever I need. I don't need them. That's what it looks like from here, from Rashi. Yeah. Another thing it teaches us. It says not only that, even more. How more? דבר אחר, another thing, עוד לימד על הכהנים הבאים לרגל. It says it also taught you. When all the Kohanim used to come to the three regalim, to the Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot, they used to come to the temple, שמקריבים במשמר ועובדים בקורבנות הבאות מחמת הרגל. It says all the sacrifices that have to do with the holidays, any Kohen can do. Any Kohen can do it. It's not just for the group. Any Kohen can do the sacrifices. כגון מוספי הרגל, ואף על פי שאין המשמר שלהם. So it's not, they're not only doing their own, they can do any work that has to do with the holiday. For example, the Pesach sacrifice, when Mashiach is going to come, when Mashiach come, we're going to have a mafia, you come to me. You don't need wait in line for the Mishmeret. Aryeh, come over here, I'll do it for you. That's right, we get out. I'm allowed to bring a Pesach sacrifice for you. You don't need to give it to the mishmar of that regel. And especially at Pesach, because it's going to be very busy over there. Everybody has a... Oh,
in a way.
But
everyone will come, this come, oh, no, what are you doing?
That's what it looks like. Okay? Very good. The Rebbe says like this, on page 6, וגם בכל שאר הזמנים שבהם עובדים הכהנים, and also in all other times that the Kohanim serve, השייכים לשאר משמרות כהונה, that are carried out by the priestly divisions, הנה כאשר הכהן ממשמר אחד עוזב את מקומו מאחד שעריך אשר הוא גר שם, any Kohen, even though he's not from this group, he has a feeling, I say, I want to bring a sacrifice to God. Whatever. He comes to there, who lives? The Kohanim, we just explained. Why do they live over there? Because if there's not any Kohanim there, who's going to get the Truma? The Kohanim will move over there because there's money. It's a lot of money that they can make being over there. If there's a place with not a lot of Kohanim are going to immigrate there because they're going to get money. It's pretty much cash as today. Think about it. When there's a lot of Kohanim in one place, you only get $5. When there's a little Kohanim, you're going to get $50. So people will move to the place they get more.
The big cities where the action is.
Yeah, they're going to go where the money is. Where the money is, that's right. Remember, it wasn't the cities. The money wasn't in the cities then. The money was in the farms. That's right. ובא בכל אשר נפשט אל המקום אשר יבחר השם. So he has desires, he wants to serve God, he comes to the temple. So it says, יכול הוא להקריב בעצמו קורבנות נדבתו, חובתו, ואפילו במשמר שנה שלו, he can bring his own sacrifices. Why? So the Rebbe says, שכן בגלל רצונו והשתדלותו לעזוב את כל ענייניו ולבוא לבית המקדש להקריב קורבן להשם. It looks like, Gid says, look, this guy is really want it. He really has a desire to God. He really wants it. Therefore what? Zichtat Torah says, you showed, I see that you really want it. You come. So therefore we're going to give it to you. Because you really have a desire, you really want it, we'll give it to you. שיכול להקריב בעצמו אפילו במשמר שאינו שלו. he has to give it by himself, even in the group that went to him.
Something doesn't click here.
By the way, I think that halachically though, even though he sacrifices it, the skins and the meat has to go to the mishmar. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the, I think.
Because he is doing it as for himself, so now he's...
Yeah, but he's allowed to do the work though.
He's not the Kohen.
Yeah.
Because you have to give the...
I think, I'm not sure, but we'll have to check. Okay. יתרה מזו, it says further on, לא זו בלבד שגם במשמר שאינו שלא יכול להקריב קורבנות נדבתו וחובתו. Not only he can do it in his own sacrifices, אלא עוד זאת שבבואו לבית המקדש ברגל, when he comes during the holidays, יכול גם להשתתף בעבודת שאר הקורבנות שבאים אותו זמן. All the sacrifices that have to do with the holidays, he himself can bring them. כי מכיוון, again, look at the
really wants.
because his spirit carries him, שנדבר רוחו אותו לבוא ולעבוד בית המקדש, his spirit took him to serve in the temple, אף שאינו מחויב בדבר, even though he has no obligation, it's not his time, שהרי ישנם כהני המשמר שעובדים בית המקדש, there's a group that's designated, זיכתה אותו התורה, it looks, the Torah says, since you want it, you're allowed to. שיוכל להשתתף בעבודת הכהנים של שאר המשמרות. You can join the other כהנים of the other. It's your right. It's your right. That's what it says. ביאור ההוראה, we are on page 7, ביאור ההוראה בעבודת האדם ובהקדמה. So now we need to understand what does that have to do with us a little bit. So let's see. אף על פי שאנו מתפללים שיבנה בית המקדש, even though every day we pray to God that the temple should be built, מכיוון שלעת עתה עדיין בית המקדש חרב, since for now the temple is destroyed, הרי העניין הרוחני של בית המקדש, הנשמה של בית המקדש, the spiritual thing of the temple, the neshama, the soul of the temple, like it says, like God says, ועשו לי מקדש ושכנתי בתוכה, he says, make for me a tabernacle and I will dwell in it, ישנו גם בזמן הזה. We have it also at our time. על ידי זה שיהודי עושו מגופו ונשמתו, ביתו וארבע אמותיו, חולו מקום ראוי לשכינה. A person needs to make himself and his house, his surrounding, a temple to God. His body should be a temple to God, and his house should be a temple to God. ומזה מובן, from here we understand, שגם ענייני העבודה של בית המקדש שייכים בעבודתו של כל אחד ואחת מישראל. So that means that the way the Kohanim used to serve the temple during that time, we can serve God now, in these days. בבית המקדש הרוחני שלו, in our spiritual בית המקדש. ובנידון דידן. So he says, what does it mean to us? That's the halacha. The halacha is that every Kohen can do its job. So it says like this. Look at how the Rebbe learns it. שכאשר נדבה רוחו אותו, when a person, his spirit takes him, the spirit takes you. Yeah. What happens? לעסוק בעבודה מסוימת, to do a specific work, גם אם הייתה צריכה להיעשות על ידי אחר, even though this work, somebody else is doing it. It's not your work. It belongs to somebody else. Somebody else is responsible for this work. ניתנת לו הזכות שיוכל לעבוד עבודה זאת. God says, don't worry, you can do it. Now, what does it mean? Let's continue. ובלשון הרמב"ם, let's look at how the Rambam says it. The Rambam says it as follows. לא שבט לוי בלבד. Now, pay attention to the words of the Rambam. We're on the page 7 in the bottom. The words of the Rambam are very special over here. Pay attention to exactly what he says. לא שבט לוי בלבד, the Rambam says, it's not only talking about the tribe of Levi. אלא כל איש ואיש, but each and every man, אשר נדבה רוחו אותו, that his spirit takes him, for what? His spirit takes him to do what? להיבדל, to separate himself. To separate himself from what? Don't know. לעמוד לפני השם, לשרתו ולעבדו. His spirit separated, he says, I want to serve God. I want to be a servant of God. Every man that feels like I want to be a servant of God, הרי זה נתקדש קודש קודשים. It says he became holy. You know, there's an old joke that a person comes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, I want to become a Kohen. So the rabbi says, well, you're crazy. What do you mean you want to become a Kohen? You can't become a Kohen. It's either you're Kohen or you're not Kohen. He says, no, Rabbi, I really want to become a Kohen. So the rabbi said, forget about it. What are we? We're not reform. We're not conservative. You can become a Kohen. He says, Rabbi, I have $100,000 to donate to the shul. So the rabbi said, oh, for $100,000, now we're talking. He said, give me the $100,000 and we'll work on it. So he gives him $100,000. He says, you're a Kohen, you're a Kohen, you're a Kohen. So he says, just have one question for you. Why do you want to be a Kohen so much? So he says, I don't know. My father was a Kohen. My grandfather was a Kohen. I also want to be a Kohen. So you can't become a Kohen. But look how the Rambam said, Nitkadesh Kodesh Kodashim. He becomes Holy of Holies. Just like whom? Just like a Kohen. He becomes, the Rambam says, anybody who feels like it, who wants to separate himself, can become Holy of Holies. What does it mean? V'yeh Hashem chelko v'nachalato le'olam. It means that you know what he becomes? He becomes a Kohen. That's now, you know, what's a Kohen? A Kohen is somebody that doesn't work. He dedicates himself entirely for whom? To God.
Sure, but it doesn't mean that he can do korbanot and this. He can do, I don't know, you can dedicate his life to Hashem.
We're going to see what it means. Very good. Very good.
But Paul...
Yeah, we're going to see what it means. What does it mean?
I'll be a Kohen.
Yeah, very good. Like it says, and the Rambam says there's a verse that says it. Where does the verse says? It says, Ata tomecha gorali. It says, the verse says, you guide my destiny. It says, I trust you. I don't need to go to work. I don't need to, I trust you, God. I'm going to do my stuff. That's it. No work, no nothing. And let's see what was the job of the Levi. And maybe we're going to understand this. In source number 3, on page 8, it says like this. ולמה לא זכה לוי בנחלת ארץ ישראל ובבזתה עם אחיו? It says, why did the tribe of Levi did not get inheritance in the land of Israel? No, when they go to war and they divide the spoils of war, Levi gets nothing. So he doesn't get no portion of the land, and he doesn't get any spoils of war. So how are you going to make it? Why? Why is that? So he said like this, מפני שהובדל לעבוד את השם משרתו. God says, I don't want your head in business. You know what your job is? To serve me. Your head is going to be in business, your head is going to go to war, you're going to find every 5 minutes, you're going to find a reason why you can't serve, because you need to do this, or you need to do that, and we need to go to war, and we need to do... No. Your job is to serve me. That's what God says. That's your Levi. Velehorot says, and again, but we said he only works twice a year, maybe. It is maybe twice a lifetime, as we said. So what does he do the rest of the time? Lehorot drachav hayesharim וממשפטיו הצדיקים לרבים. He has to be the rabbis. The tribe of Levi were the rabbis of the Jewish people. They taught them the laws of God. שנאמר, where do we see this? Because it says about the tribe of Levi. Zemitz, you're a Levi. It says about your tribe. יורו משפטיך ליעקב. It says they will teach your laws to Yaakov, ותורתך לישראל, and your Torah to the Jewish people. And here comes the point. לפיכך הובדלו מדרכי העולם. This is why God separated them. He says, you guys don't mess with business. It's not for you. Don't touch it. No business, no war. What do? You serve God. לא הולכים מלחמה כשאר ישראל. It says, you guys are not going to be warriors. You don't go to war. That's not your job. ולא נוחלים. You're not going to inherit any land. Because otherwise, land, a headache, exactly. ולא זוכים לעצמם בכוח גופן. You're not going to go to work. אלא הם חיל השם. It says, who's going to take of you? Who's going to take care of you? God is. You're the army of God. שנאמר ברך השם חילו. And you know who you have to trust God. God is going to supply, don't worry. God will give. והוא ברוך זוכה להם שנאמר אני חלק העם נחלתך. And God is going to make sure that you have enough. And this is the reason why in the land of Israel, the Kohen and the Levi used to get the Truma. Because otherwise, how are they going to live? Today, it's a different problem. And now comes the Rambam. And the Rambam tells you every person can do this. That's what the Rambam tells you. So let's try to understand what he says. Ve'lo shevet Levi bilvad. It says not only the tribe of Levi. Ela kol ish ve'ish, but each and every man. I want you to pay attention. The Rambam is exact. Okay. So when he says kol ish ve'ish, he means kol ve'ish ve'ish.
Oh, ish.
It says kol ish is enough. You don't need kol ish ve'ish. Every man. I don't know.
To be a ish to do it.
Yeah, kol ish. Mikol ba'ei ha'olam. It says from all the people of the world. Asher nadva rocho oto, that he has the spirit of God. We're on page 8, second paragraph, third line. Vehevi'o mada'o. And here comes the point. His mind brings him to what? Lehibadel, to separate himself. La'amod lifnei Hashem ve'lesharto ve'la'avdo ve'leda'at Hashem, to stand in front of God, to serve Him, and to learn about God, to know godliness. Ve'halach yashar kmo she'asau ha'elokim, is going to go straight the way God made him go. Ufarak me'al tzavaro ol ha'cheshbonot harabim asher bikshu bnei adam. He decides, I'm not going to care about business, I'm not going to care about this, I'm not caring about nothing. I'm caring only about what? About God. So again it says, look at how the Rambam says, Harei ze nitkadesh kodesh kodashim. He becomes holy of holies. He becomes just like a Levi. He can make himself a Levi, he can make himself a Kohen, he can put himself there. Now it's God's responsibility to sustain him. V'yeh Hashem chelko v'nachato le'olam b'alamim. From now on, you know what is going to be his business? From now on, God is his business. That's it. He has a partnership with God from now on. ויזכור לו בעולם הזה דבר מספיק לו, כמו שזכה לכהן לוי. He says, how is he going to survive? He says, God is going to make sure. He's not going to become a multi-billionaire, but he's going to survive. He's going to be, he doesn't care about the billions, he's not interested in billions. He's going to survive. הרי דוד עליו השלום אומר, and this is what King David says in Tehillim, Hashem menat chelki. This is what King David, look what he says. God is the lot of my portion, you are my cup, you support my load. Hashem menat chelki v'chosi, God is my portion, אתה תומך גורלי, you're going to support me. He says, I trust in you, God. I don't need to trust in my business. I don't need to trust in the stock market. I don't need to trust in my investments. God is going to be there. So let's continue. עניינו של שבט לוי, אומר הרמב"ם, the Rambam says, what's this שבט לוי? What's this idea? שייך לכל אחד ואחד מישראל. The Rambam says it belongs to every Jew. Every Jew can become a Levi, not only Jeff. Yeah, Moshe can also become a Levi. Asher nadva ruchot, as long as the person is motivated to go there. להשתייך לשבט לוי, על שם ילווה אישי אליי. Now, what is the word Levi? Why is it called Levi? Is because when Levi was born, Leah said about Levi, now that I gave birth, it was Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Yeah, I gave birth to the third son, which means I did my portion. Now my husband is be connected to me, melaveh elai, because her husband all the time went with the other wife, with Rachel. She says now she called him Levi to show that her husband is going to be now connected to me.
Now because
I gave him 3 at least. I did my.
So she picked 2, but she needs somebody else to pick the third one.
Yeah, that's a Rashi. That's the first explanation of the Rashi. The second explanation of the Rashi, if you look at the Rashi over there, that's the first explanation. Yeah. Very good. The second explanation of the Rashi is because there's 4 imahot. They didn't do what. I did my part.
Oh,
so he can never complain to me that I didn't do my part. That's the second explanation of Rashi. Exactly what you said. Hainu chibur im hakadosh baruch hu. Levi means to be connected to God. Now my husband is going to be connected to me. He can't run away. That's what she's saying. Ad ledarga shel hakohen gadol. It says until where? How much connection you can have? Any person, any Jew, or male or female. How much connection? Nitkadesh kodesh kodashim. He becomes the high priest. He becomes Holy of Holies.
That's what you mean, Kodesh?
Yeah, Holy of Holies. Not Kodesh. Kodesh Kodashim. Who goes into the Kodesh Kodashim? Only the Kohen Gadol goes into the high priest. He gets to the level of the high priest. שמתייחס לכהן גדול, כמו שכתוב, ויבדל אהרון להקדישו קודש קודשים. It's talking about Aaron. היינו שכל, and what's the idea of Aaron? Aaron is somebody, he doesn't have a life, he doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have, you know what he is? He is representing the Jewish nation. In Yom Kippur, that's when he went into the Kodesh Kodashim, into the Holy of Holies, and he was representing the entire Jewish people. He had no personal life. All his life was towards supporting the Jewish people. So it says, ואז יהיה השם חלקו ונחלתו לעולם, אתה תומך גורלים. Then God is going to be his partnership with God. God is going to support him. שהקדוש ברוך הוא בעצמו מסייע ועוזר בכל המצטרך לו. God is going to help him in all his needs, ולכל הראש שיוכל לקיים החלטתו הטובה, נדבה רוחו הטוב. The most important part that he decided to serve God, God is going to help him with that decision. בפועל ממש. How? When God sees you serious. What's serious? You remember what the guy had to do? In the Beit HaMikdash, he had to leave home. He had to leave whatever his home. It says, once God sees you leave your home, and this is what you want, you're serious, you leave your business, you leave everything behind, you leave your wall, you just trust in God, and that's what you want to serve God, God says, I'm with you.
Why did he create Kohen Levi method? God should say, who wants to serve me? Just, you have to...
Because there's not many.
Only what the Rambam say, without...
Yeah, because there's not many who want. There's not many who want to dedicate. So he needs also a group that does it as the Mishmeret. The Mishmeret does it for sure. And then whoever else wants, they can come also. Additional. על ידי זה שמסיר ממנו כל ההפרעות של היצר הרע, עד שלא נשאר רושם כלל בכלל. And if God sees you serious, He's also going to help you to become a righteous person. But it's going to become much more complicated, as we're going to see soon. And God, over here, the Rebbe says something from the words of the Rambam that before the Rebbe said it, nobody ever thought about it. So let's look inside. ידוע ומפורסם, we're in page 10. We're going to continue. ידוע ומפורסם, if you think now it's worse, it's going to become much worse than what you think. ידוע ומפורסם שבלימוד הרמב"ם מדייקים בכל תיבה ותיבה. It says, when the Rambam wrote his book, it's an accurate book. The יד החזקה is an accurate book. ואין פלא בכך שהרי מדובר אודות ספר יד החזקה משנת תורה. It's a book of laws. And the book of laws was one of the books that I think it might be the only book that the Rambam wrote in Hebrew. All the other books he wrote in Arabic, and it was translated into Hebrew later on. So
that was
exact, and we know it was exact because we have the manuscript and the Rambam's handwriting correcting things. Yeah, so we know it's an exact thing by him. שכתבו הרמב"ם בלשון הקודש, that the Rambam wrote in Hebrew. שלא כשאר ספריו ופירושיו שהם העתקה מלשון ערבית. Not all like all the other writings that was translated from Arabic. כך שאין ודאות שהעתקה בכלל דיוק. When the translation, you don't know if it's correct or not. It's a translation. וגם הגיע בעצמו, and also the יד החזקה, he himself looked at, כפי שרואים בדפי כתבי היד שנשארו בשלמות התהגות והשינויים בכתב ידו של הרמב"ם בעצמו. Like we see, we have portions of the יד החזקה with the Rambam's own handwriting. You remember there's a famous picture of the menorah?
Okay.
That's the picture of the Rambam actually. This is his handwriting that he wrote over there, and he sketched. וגם בהלכה זו יש למצוא עניינים של פלאות, כאשר מדייקים בלשון הרמב"ם בהלכה זו כדי לקמן. Now the Rebbe is going to look at each and every word, and he's going to blow our minds completely. So let's look at how the Rebbe learns the Rambam now. ולא שבט לוי בלבד. So first of all, the Rebbe says, the Rambam says, it's not only the tribe of Levi. In other words, it's not only the designated people. Not only the Kohanim, not only the priests. אלא כל איש ואיש, but each and every man. מצינו דרשות חז"ל בנוגע לדיוק הכתוב איש ואיש. It says, we looked at the Gemara, we looked at the sages, what they said, whenever you find the word ish va'ish, man and man, What does it mean?
לא רק איש אחד, two איש.
Oh,
You have to find.
שמתייחס לשני סוגי אישים. It says we're talking about two types of people over here, not just one type. The Rambam says specifically we're talking about ish va'ish, two kind of people. You would say any man that wants. If he wanted to say any man that wants, it says kol ish yirtzeh. You don't need kol ish va'ish. When he says ish va'ish, it means there's two types. Which two types we're talking about?
כל מי שנזבו ליבו.
על פי זה יש לבאר את דיוק לשון הרמב"ם כל איש ואיש. So now we have to understand what two types of people we're talking about. אף שלכאורה יכול לכתוב כל איש, it's easier to write every man, שכוונתו לשני סוגים של אנשים. So we know that the Rambam means two type of people. Now, which two type of people you would think he's talking about?
Jews and converts?
We're going to see. Good guess. ובהקדמה, says in introduction, ישנם הטועים בלימוד הלכה זו. There are many people who learn this halacha in the Rambam and they make a mistake. שכוונת הרמב"ם ליהודי שמובדל בענייני העולם. A lot of people think that the Rambam, you know who he was talking to? He was talking to righteous people. He was talking to Rabbi, a Rebbe. You know, somebody who's very special, a righteous person who wants to not work anymore. He contemplates. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai doesn't want to work anymore. Even though he's not a Levi, he's not a Rabbi, he was born to a regular family. Someone like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, with a great mind, with a great thing, can separate himself and what? And become a great person. He can become a Levi. That's what you could have thought. Only a Jew that is completely separated from the matters of the world, ונמצא רק בדלת אמות של תורה, עד שתורתו אמונתו, a person who completely doesn't care about work, money, the worldly things. He's a spiritual person. Only that's what the Rambam is talking about. That's the impression we had in the beginning. Yeah, that's what the impression we thought. אבל באמת לא זוהי כוונת הרמב"ם כלל. It says that's exactly what the Rambam didn't want. Not didn't want at all, as we're going to see. That's the first ish. But he says, כל איש ואיש. I want to know what's the second ish. הרמב"ם מבאר שבסדר ההנהגה של שבט לוי, and this is why the Rambam says, שנדבה רוחו, it says, any person that his spirit takes him. His spirit takes him to what? לעמוד לפני השם, to stand in front of God, לשרתו ולעבדו, יכול להיות אצל כל איש ואיש, not just by the person,
by
who,
the Kohen.
by the righteous person. Not just by the righteous person we just described. Not just by this righteous person we just described, doesn't care about physicality. He only cares about spirituality. היינו אצל שני סוגים שיש באנשים. By the two types of people. Who are the two types? בטבע בני אדם, it says in the nature of people, יש אנשים בעלי חוש בעניינים שכליים. There are people who are spiritual people. What does it mean? It doesn't mean spiritual. It means theoretical people. In other words, they've got a good head for theory. They understand theory. They're very good at theory. In other words, they can understand the theory of how you can build a rocket ship. Right? Exactly. Tell them to screw the thing, forget about it. They don't know what they can't fix nothing. But in theory, they're excellent. So these are going to be, as we're going to see, the two types of people. And the Rambam says, you would think it's only about the theory, the guy who has the theory in his mind says, no. אנשי שכל שמונחים בעיני חוכמה, you would think it's only people who have the intellect, that all their life, Einstein, he thinks about only spiritual things, ועניינים רוחניים. And then there's also the other type of people. Who are the other type of people? יש אנשים בעלי חוש, בעלים טבעיים. There's a guy who needs to build the rocket. You can't give Einstein to build rockets, trust me. The rocket is going nowhere. And physical, that's right. Very good. ענייני העולם, it's called אנשים מעשיים. It's like spiritually your idea is wonderful, it's not going to work over here. Down here in this world, you don't do it the way you think it is, this is the way you do it.
In a way like an architect and a contractor.
Exactly.
The architect, he tell you, build it like a contractor, what are you doing?
Exactly. והדרך זה אצל בני ישראל ישנה חלוקה של יושבי אוהל ובעלי עסק. It says this is what you have by the Jewish people. You have the people who sit and learn Torah all day long, and you have the people who do something in the world, who open businesses, who open schools, who do stuff. Mari Oraita u'Mari Uvdin Tuvim. It says people of the Torah and people of the commandments. Balei Asakim. Ele sheToratam u'Manotam. Those people that the Torah is their life. Ve'sh'ar Bnei Yisraelim, and the rest of the Jewish people shekov'im itim laTorah, that the Torah is not necessarily their life. They have a business, but they have time. They set aside time every day to learn Torah. But רוב הזמן עוסקים במנהג דרך הארץ. They don't learn Torah 18 hours a day. They learn Torah 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day maybe. The rest of the time, they have to go and sell houses. That's what they have to do. וזוהי כוונת הרמב"ם. By the way, it didn't end yet. This is just the beginning. וזוהי כוונת הרמב"ם בכתבו, and this is what the Rambam writes, לא שבט לוי בלבד. It says, it's not only the tribe of Levi, אלא כל איש ואיש. But each and every man, שכל אחד משני סוגי האנשים, it doesn't matter if you're the businessman, or it doesn't matter if you're the Torah scholar, each one of them יכול להגיע לסדר העבודה של שבט לוי. Each one of them can be the high priest. Each one of them can become a Levi. How? והיינו, שגם לאחרי שנדבה רוחו חולו, להיות כמו שבט לוי, נשאר כל אחד בסוגו הקודם. That even after he wants to be a Levi, he's still a businessman. He's a businessman who's a Levi. What does it mean? We see soon. It says he doesn't. This is what the Rambam says. He doesn't change from being a businessman. He doesn't become Rabbi Shimon in the cave. No. He remains a businessman. And over there is Holy of Holies, in his business. So what are you talking about? So before we even talk, what are we talking about? We're going to go even a little bit deeper. Mosif Rambam Chidush Gadol. Now, the Rebbe shows that the Rambam adds something nobody until the Rebbe mentioned it ever thought about. Ever thought. I don't know if they understood.
Rambam thought.
The Rambam wrote it. But nobody
understood it.
I'm sure people did, but nobody wrote it.
Oh.
The Rebbe was the first one to reveal it to us, to reveal it in this generation. Yeah. שמפרשי הרמב"ם לא עמדו על זה. It says, I looked at all the commentaries and nobody mentioned it. It says the Rambam writes, he adds 3 more words. And it says, mikol ba'ei ha'olam. What does he need that for?
Non-Jews.
Very good. Excellent. It says, they said the Rambam wasn't talking only about Jews. The Rambam was also talking about non-Jew, from every people, from every creature of the world. We're not just talking about Jews over here. The Rambam says, every man can become holy of holies. If he dedicates himself to God, he becomes holy. It's not just Judaism. Kol ba'ei ha'olam, it says, where do we say kol ba'ei ha'olam? Hayom adrat olam, it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. It says kol ba'ei ha'olam. God is in Rosh Hashanah is the God of all the creatures of the world. הוא לשון המשנה בראש השנה כל באי העולם. It's what the Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah, that God created the entire universe. עוברים לפניו כבני מרון, and the entire universe comes in front of God just like sheep, and he decides this one goes and this one goes. שמתייחס להם לבני ישראל והן לאומות העולם. Over here it says, it discusses both Jews and non-Jews. וזהו שמחדש הרמב"ם כאן. Look how far the Rebbe goes. There's no reason to add these words, כל באי העולם. The Rambam wants to tell you it's any person. שהעניין של שבט לוי שייך לא רק לבני ישראל. That the thing about שבט לוי is not only the Jewish people, אלא לכל באי העולם. It's to all creatures, all the nations. היינו שגם אומות העולם יכולים להגיע לדרגה. Anybody who wants to dedicate his life to God has the wherewithal to become God's servant, and God is going to take care of him, don't worry. וזהו גם הדין, and this is the reason, in Christianity they tell you, if you don't become a Christian, you're going to go to hell. In Judaism there's no such thing. Judaism says, זהו גם הדין שחסידי אומות העולם, it says people who are non-Jews, but they're Hasidim. What does it mean Hasidim? They go they want to serve God, they serving God, יש להם חלק לעולם הבא, they have a part in the world to come. They have their own Gan Eden, they go to heaven. מכיוון שגם אצל כל באי העולם, because by all the nations of the world, יכול להיות מעמד ומצב שיהיה השם חלקו ונחלתו. He can get to a level that he is dedicated his life to godliness. And by the way, he doesn't even need to become Jewish. He doesn't need to convert.
Why?
He dedicates his life as a non-Jew to godliness, whatever it is.
Without avodah zarah,
Yeah.
he doesn't need to eat kosher.
That's right, that's
שבע
right.
מצוות בני-
שבע מצוות בני נוח. בהכרח לומר שיש לו חלק לעולם הזה. If a person dedicates himself, we have to say he has to go to heaven. וגם לאחרי שהרמב"ם מוסיף מכל באי העולם, and even after the Rambam writes to us, that it's talking about every nation, עדיין יש צורך וחידוש במה שכתוב לפני זה כל איש ואיש. You still need to say every man and man, because what you would have thought if it just says kol ish and then it says kol ba'ei olam without, if it wouldn't say ish ve'ish, you would have thought כי אף שכל באי העולם כולל הם את בני ישראל ואת אומות העולם, it says even if you're going to say both Jews and non-Jews, יש מקום לומר, you would think that which Jews and non-Jews? Only the watch one, the theoretical ones, you would think. Those who want to completely dedicate themselves to Torah, that's what you would think. And the Rambam immediately tells you, don't think that way. You're thinking it wrong. That's right. It's even the businessman. But we're going to see, what does it mean businessman yet? We have to still explain. שעניין זה שייך רק לסוג האנשים שבעלי השכל. You would think that this is only talking about Einsteins. Those people, the special, the spiritual people, שלכן יש צורך להדגיש את השייכות לכל סוגי האנשים, כל איש ואיש. That's what you have to say. Every man, that's what the Rambam says, each and every man. הן אנשי השכל והן אנשי המעשה. Both the spiritual people and the practical people. ובזה גופה לא רק בני ישראל בלבד, אלא מכל באי עולם. And in this, it's not only Jews. And even from non-Jews, you have that portion now. So it's not only the non-Jews that want to become spiritual and serve God, it's also the non-Jews who are practical and serve God. They also have. See how beautiful it comes? Now, what does it mean to be a businessman and what do you call it? And we done.
This guy right here.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, there's a story about. I had a story about in Argentina. There used to be in the yeshiva. There used to come an old man. Every day he used to daven in yeshiva, and the guys, he used to daven for hours. He used to sit over there and he used to daven for 3-4 hours. Shachris, and the kids were laughing. Were laughing at him. So one of the time, the Rebbe came over and he says to the kids, do you know who this guy is? So he's the wealthiest businessman over here in Argentina. So he says, what does he do? He says he sell carpets. That was his job. He used to sell carpets. You know, that's what he used to do all day long. He says, very wealthy businessman. Yeah, that's what he used to do. He used to go to the market where they sell carpets. He used to make millions. He was very wealthy. Extremely wealthy. But he says, do you know what he does all day long? You think that he sells carpets? Said, no. When he davened at yeshiva, when he used to be over there, he used to go from merchant to merchant, the Jews one, and the non-Jews all the time. The Jewish ones, when he used to go from merchant to merchant, he used to go with his tefillin, and he used to make them put on tefillin. Yeah? And those who didn't keep Shabbos, he used to encourage them to keep Shabbos. And says, and that's what he did all day long. He also did business. But he says, if you ask this guy, in the end of the day, what bothered him? Well, where was his mind all day long? Was his mind on his business all day long? Or was his mind on his... It says, this is what it means, a businessman that dedicates his life to God. Someone who's... It's not that he doesn't do business. He does. He sells, he buys, he does. But all the time, deep down in his mind, is That's right. There's something to do for God. There's something to do for God. So this is what it means. Even a businessman that dedicates his entire, in other words, it's not that his mind is occupied constantly, not with the business. Yeah, the business he needs to do. But he is occupied with serving God. This is the idea. Yes.
He's a Jew first and a businessman second.
Very good. He's a Jew first and a businessman second. I love it.